When I was 7 years old, the home that I was living in with my family burned down. And I don't have a lot of memories from that time period. I think I've shut out a lot of it because it was very traumatic. But I do remember Red Cross coming in and helping us. And they didn't give us a lot, but they gave us some clothes. They gave us a place to stay. I even remember us getting a couple toys. And it was just this bright spot in this dark cloud that was surrounding me and my family at the time. And I'll never forget the smell of the smoke that was left on anything that we did salvage from the fire. And there's so many families right now that are dealing with and going through a lot of the same thing in Southern California right now. These wildfires are unprecedented. It is horrific. I live up here in Northern California, so we haven't been affected by it, but it's just a devastating situation. And I know it's easy to think of LA and just think, oh, that's just wealthy celebrities. You know, they don't need help. But the truth is, there's thousands of families right now that are going through absolute hell. So before I got to the list today, I just wanted to ask you that if you're in position to help out at all, please consider going to the link down in the description to Red Cross and doing what you can. And my heart just goes out to everybody down there affected by this horrible situation. Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Tubi. And with that, let's get to the list.
You're gonna go to hell. You're gonna go to hell.
Swallowed is a 2022 body horror movie, written and directed by Carter Smith. It stars Cooper Koch, Jenna Malone, and Mark Patton. It follows two best friends who on their final night out end up smuggling a wrapped substance via swallowing that ends up going horribly wrong.
They go down the hatch before they make the trip.
Come on, that wasn't part of the deal. No way.
Let's just go. I don't need the money. Let's just go.
Listen, you're not backing out now, okay? It's too late for that.
This movie absolutely got to me. It's gross, it's vulgar, it's disturbing, it is uncomfortable in so many different ways, and a big warning to mostly the guys out there. If you're not comfortable with your sexuality, so to speak, and you can't handle a little bit of swinging dong and man-ass, then this might be something you should skip. Our main character in this is gay, and in the whole setup of it is he is about to head off to LA to star in a male porn. Now, there is a lot of male nudity in this, but there isn't actually any gay sex, which kind of surprised me. I thought there would be some because just kind of the way it was feeling early on. But with that being said, that doesn't mean there's not some very uncomfortable, like sexually weird scenes. This movie goes for it, man. There is some really crazy body horror in this, some very uncomfortable things that will, especially for guys out there, make you squirm and feel very uncomfortable. But I think this is a damn good movie. It is extremely well performed, and Mark Patton plays the villain in this, and he is incredibly disturbing, very creepy, makes your skin just absolutely crawl. But it's really intense and keeps you on the edge of your seat and just makes you squirm the entire time. And it's one of those movies that I felt got better and better as it goes. Because probably about 30 minutes or so into this, I wasn't completely sold on it. It was doing enough though to keep me interested, but yet by the end, I was just blown away. I was like, that movie is awesome. But if you're a fan of body horror and can handle some swinging dong, this is a movie that I highly, highly recommend.
You're the littlest man I ever seen.
You're the ugliest.
The Thicket is a 2024 Western thriller. Directed by Elliot Lester, it's based on a 2013 novel of the same name by Joe R. Lansdale, and stars Peter Dinklage, Juliette Lewis, Esme Creed Miles, and Lavon Hawke. When a bounty hunter and a band of unlikely heroes pursue a brutal killer, they find themselves in a deadly no man's land known as the Thicket.
There's a bounty on her. $10,000.
You work for me, 3 ways on the bounty. I say what, I say when. You ever shoot a man?
No. I'm a Christian.
So Western horror movies is one of my favorite subgenres. Now, I won't go as far as to say this is a full-blown Western horror movie. It's much more of a Western thriller than it is a horror movie. It doesn't quite go hard enough, I don't think, to be considered a horror movie. However, it does have horror moments. It gets grisly, disturbing. You know, it's not holding anything back though, really either. And it gets dark and disturbing and deals with some pretty horrific situations. But Peter Dinklage is just absolutely badass in this movie. It's so cool to see him kicking some serious ass in this and just being an absolute assassin. It's really well done in the way that it puts this group together, and each of them are interesting in their own way, and they each have their own story, but yet it doesn't take forever to explain who they are, but yet it still gives you enough that they feel unique and you care about them. But the real star of the show here is Juliette Lewis. She is an absolutely incredible villain. She is so disturbing, and at least for me, I totally bought her as this evil villain. But it's not a perfect movie, I'm not saying that either, but it is a very entertaining one, and one that if you have yet to see, I think it's definitely worth your time. Final Prayer, also known as Borderlands in the UK, is a 2013 British found footage horror movie. Written and directed by Elliot Goldner in his directorial debut, it stars Robin Hill, Marcus Cunningham, and Aidan McArdle. A group of Vatican investigators research an old church rumored to be the site of a miracle.
I've seen that symbol before.
Yes, in the pagan times.
If you're a fan of found footage movies, this is one of the best, and for the longest time, I just never got a chance to see this. And I've had so many of you guys yelling at me in the comments when I've released my best of or recommended found footage list and stuff. I'm like, where's Final Prayer? Why haven't you seen this movie? Why haven't you talked about this movie? And I now get it. I understand, because as far as found footage goes, this is really, really good. It has a real interesting mystery factor to it, where it just kind of slowly brings you down this journey, and little by little, you're learning what's going on, and you're starting to put the pieces together, and it gets more and more creepy, more and more fascinating, and disturbing as it goes. It's also well acted, well directed, it feels very believable, it's a very authentic, real feeling found footage movie. Because like a lot of found footage movies, the cast will be a lot of really green actors, and it'll show. They won't really be believable as real people. But in this case, it's really believable. The cast do a fantastic job of selling this situation. But without giving anything away, where it ultimately ends up is just awesome. So if you're a fan of found footage and have yet to see this one, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch. The Coffee Table is a 2022 Spanish black comedy horror movie. Directed by Kay Casas, it stars David Peroya and Estefania de los Santos. Jesus and Maria are a couple going through a tough time in their relationship. Nevertheless, they have just become parents. So as a sign of their new life to come, they decide to buy a new coffee table, a decision that will change their existence.
Y les aseguro que esta mesa, por diseño y por su nivel, les va a cambiar la vida a mejor.
So I know I've talked about this movie quite a bit in the last couple months. It was actually in my top 10 of the year. That's how good I think this movie is. But the only reason I wanted to throw it on this list real quick was because it's actually for sure on Tubi this time. Last time I recommended it on a Tubi list back in the summer, it wasn't there. I mean, it was briefly, and then for some reason, within 24 hours after releasing the video, they pulled it. I don't know why, and I'm crossing my fingers that they don't do that again this time. But I've double checked, triple checked, it is definitely there, and it's been there for a few weeks now. But just a warning, if you haven't heard me talk about this movie before, it is extremely dark. It is pitch black dark, very upsetting and disturbing, at least to some people. I know a few who it didn't really bother that much, but I know a lot of us, it definitely got to us, stuck with us long after we had seen it. But if you're looking for an uncomfortable, disturbing movie, this is one I think is definitely worth checking out.
I'll let you get away with that.
Where is she?
Dread is a 2009 British horror movie, written and directed by Anthony de Blasi. It's based on a short story of the same name by Clive Barker and stars Jackson Rathbone, Sean Evans, and Hannah Steen. A charismatic but unstable college student convinces a misfit classmate to help him with this thesis project, a study of people's biggest fears.
I was there no more than 10 minutes before some boy asked me what was wrong with my face.
The concussion left me deaf for 3 years.
This movie is such an interesting concept because the ideas behind this and directions that it goes and how it focuses on different people's fears and how it flushes all that out is such a compelling idea. Now it is aged just a little bit, and in some ways it gives it some charm because it really is kind of a flashback to the early 2000s. But where that does hurt it just a little bit is the quality of the film itself. The way this movie looks, the lighting and all that, it's very of its time, and that does date it slightly. But if you can look past that, this movie gets very creepy, really uncomfortable and disturbing, and you can definitely see that this is a story inspired by Clive Barker. I also think the cast is great in it, and just in general, it's an entertaining movie. It's just not one to overthink or pick apart, because if you do, I'm sure you'll find some flaws. But if you just go into this and enjoy it for what it is, I think it's a great time.
They wanted a show. I gave them a show.
Vox Lux is a 2018 drama thriller written and directed by Brady Corbett. It stars Natalie Portman, Jude Law, and Raffi Cassidy. An unusual set of circumstances brings unsuspected success to a young girl, rocketing her to stardom.
It's a weird world we live in. And the way I've chosen to live my life
Don't follow me.
goes against some people's views on things.
So don't go into this expecting a horror movie. I know that most of the time the movies I recommend are horror or at least horror adjacent. I don't even know if I would say this is horror adjacent exactly, but hear me out. The reason it's on this list is mostly there's one scene, and you'll know pretty early on what I'm talking about. There is one scene in this that is just, I mean, brutal. It really made me uncomfortable and left a mark on me. Like not a lot of horror movies I've seen. And then even beyond that one scene, there's a few other scenes that are extremely uncomfortable, jarring, and bothersome. But it's a strange kind of artsy movie that almost has an A24 feel to it. And there's a lot of interesting choices that are made here, especially the performance from Natalie Portman, who we all know is an incredible actor. But the way she plays this role is very strange, and I'm not even sure if it exactly works, but it does, at least in an entertaining way. But I do think no matter what, it's a very compelling story and a cautionary tale in a lot of ways, because you're just kind of following the life of this young girl and her journey to becoming super famous and how ultimately it kind of destroys her life. And it's interesting because it was listed as a musical on Tubi. And I was racking my brain trying to think of how in any way is this a musical? Like, this is no more a musical, in my opinion anyway, than Smile 2 was. Like, there's a couple performance scenes where this pop star is kind of performing, but it's not very much, and it definitely doesn't have that whole musical number kind of element. So I'm not exactly sure where that label came from. And so that's why I'm labeling it as a drama thriller. I think that's much more fitting than being a musical, because I'm telling you, it doesn't feel like a musical at all. But if you're feeling experimental and wanting to watch something kind of different tonight, different than a lot of the things I normally recommend, I think you definitely should give this a look.
Knowing is good, but knowing everything is better. So, mate, is there anything you want to tell us?
The Circle is a 2017 techno thriller directed by James Ponsoldt. It stars Emma Watson, Karen Gillan, Tom Hanks, and Bill Paxton. A woman lands a dream job at a powerful tech company called The Circle, only to uncover an agenda that will affect the lives of all of humanity.
I am a believer in the perfectibility of human beings. and the circle, we can finally realize our potential.
It's crazy to me how I just completely missed that this movie even existed, because with the cast that it has, as high of a budget as it is, like, this is not some tiny little micro indie movie by any means. Now, I do kind of understand why it probably flew under the radar, at least for me, is because it isn't a home run, not on the level that it could have been, especially with this cast. But that being said, this is still a damn good movie. And I think it's really interesting, the message that it's trying to convey here, because it basically, this company is kind of like an Apple, because it really is a cautionary tale about technology and the world we're in right now, where our privacy and everything is just little by little being sold off to the highest bidder, so to speak, that we're just slowly but surely giving away our rights for the sake of convenience, to make things easier for us to pay or whatever. And it is a tiny bit heavy-handed with that message, so like I said, it doesn't quite work as well as it could have, but still, the cast is incredible. It is intense, it's a thrill ride, a nail-biter, and the directions that I think it ultimately goes surprised me too, because I didn't really think it was going to end up going where it does, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. Beyond this incredible cast, just seeing Bill Paxton, even though he has a small role in it, seeing him one more time in a movie I had never even heard of was really awesome. But it's just an absolutely stacked cast. There's a whole bunch of other stars in this that I didn't even mention. I mean, it really is one of the more stacked lineups in a movie I've seen in a while. But I think if you go into this with the right expectations, and not expect to have this huge home run kind of movie based on the cast or whatever, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, because no matter what, I think you'll definitely be entertained.
Play it.
The Sonata is a 2018 mystery horror movie. Co-written and directed by Andrew Desmond, it stars Freya Tingley, Rutger Hauer, and Simon Abkarian. A gifted musician inherits a mansion after her long-lost father dies under mysterious circumstances. Soon she begins to discover that he had many evil secrets.
I think that he was working on something before he died. A sonata. Some of the staves, they begin with symbols that I've never seen before.
This is a really cool little movie. It's super stylish, really beautifully shot, well acted. It's a fairly small production kind of movie, but it looks much grander than it actually is. In a lot of ways, it reminded me of The Ninth Gate. Now, that's not to say she travels all over the world finding out different things. It's not like that, but as in the mystery factor, the creepiness of it, the way it looks, there's similarities to the directions and just the overall feel of this. But it's moody and atmospheric and a lot of fun to kind of watch as the story unfolds, and you little by little put the pieces together on where it ultimately is going to go. I think it's a fun, engaging movie that's definitely worth your time.
She's got him now, Aiden. There's nothing I can do.
Innocence can be hell.
The Reflecting Skin is a 1990 British-Canadian horror movie, written and directed by Philip Ridley. It stars Jeremy Cooper, Viggo Mortensen, and Lindsay Duncan. A young boy living in 1950s America fantasizes that a neighboring widow is actually a vampire, and that she's responsible for a number of disappearances in the area.
Tell me, how old do you think I am?
50.
Oh, no, I'm older than that. I'm 200 years old.
This is such a weird, creative, beautiful movie. It's very quirky and artsy, and it's really interesting to me because it feels like a lot newer of a movie than it is. It really does. It feels like it could have been released by A24 right now and people would dig it. And because of that, I think it's way ahead of its time and was not right for the 1990s audience, which is why it really has flown under the radar. It wasn't until this past year that I saw it. But it's sexy and uncomfortable. It's creepy and skin crawling. It's disturbing, and there are definitely some scenes that'll get to you. And a big warning, kind of early on in this, there's a scene with a frog that if you're someone that can't handle any animal deaths, definitely skip over that part. When you see the frog, just skip a few minutes or so until after you're past all that. It's also so cool in the directions that it takes and where it ultimately ends up, because it kept me guessing the whole time on what I was even watching. Like, what is this movie doing? But it just feels like it seduces you into being just sucked into it and you can't look away. So I think this is a fantastic one, and that's why, even though I recommended it last summer on a Tubi list, I had to recommend it again. It really deserves a lot more of an audience than it gets. So if you have yet to see this one, definitely add it to your list.
Someone out there is taking all these urban legends and making them reality.
Urban legend.
Have you heard the one about the microwave?
Urban Legend is a 1998 slasher horror movie. Directed by Jamie Blanks, it stars Alicia Witt, Rebecca Gayheart, and Jared Leto. A college student suspects that a series of bizarre murders are connected to certain urban legends.
What if there is a lunatic on campus?
What is he gonna do next, huh? Maybe put spider eggs in Bubblicious?
The idea of an urban legend serial killer. It's a stretch.
So lately, we've had a bunch of these sequels coming out to late 90s, early 2000s slasher movies. First, we had recent sequels to Scream, and now we have I Know What You Did Last Summer getting a sequel. It just made me think about that if I could get a sequel to any of those late 90s slasher movies, it would be Urban Legend. I feel like there's the most still that could be done with this. There's so many ideas and directions that it could be taken. And just as recently as 2022, we heard that they were working, at least in development, on making a sequel to this. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen. But I still think, at least in a nostalgic, fun way, this movie holds up. The look of it, the style of it, I mean, this is my era. This is when I was first going to see horror movies in the theaters by myself. So I have so many great memories with my friends of going to see this movie, Scream, like just that era of slasher horror movies was so entertaining. Beyond that, last summer, watching Longlegs, Alicia Witt was the performance in that movie that didn't get talked about nearly enough, but I thought was absolutely incredible. And so that also reminded me of this movie. I just think this is such a fun, entertaining movie. It's one to not overthink, not take too serious, but that's how I always like to end my list. So I think this is a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor this weekend, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And I want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description, or you can help support the channel by going and clicking on that join button down there and become a channel member. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 more horror movies that I highly recommend. And I'll see you guys next time.